What's up, skeptics? Welcome to another episode of Reason to Doubt, your source for all things skeptical. I'm Jordan, joined with Jared, as always. How's it going, Jared?
It is going. It's been a while, actually. You've been doing some solo stuff for the past couple weeks.
It has been a while, especially been a while since we've been live, as evidenced by the highlighted comments. Correct, bow ties are cool. We are doing this one live. We haven't done a live stream in a while, so good to see everybody. It's been a long time. Nice to see Real Seekers in the chat. I know it's crazy we haven't done a live stream. We were trying to figure out the last time we did a live stream, and it might have been Steve Mason now that we think about it, or maybe Vishanti, I'm not sure. But in any case, today we are talking about the Shroud of Turin, specifically a video that Jared found and sent to me a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And this video was like I was gonna do the good host thing. I was gonna watch it and like do some prep and like prepare so like we could have a nice highbrow, high quality episode. And I watched 30 seconds. I was like, this is the cringiest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. So if you're expecting a really in-depth breakdown, debunking of video, this is not it.
This is not this. Yeah.
This is the behind the scenes footage of what Jordan and I usually do the first time we look at a video. So our first reaction.
Which ironically is what we did the first time we did any Shroud of Turin stuff ever. Yeah. We just did a video about the Shroud of Turin, just like this is what it looks like when we look at a video for the first time. You'll just see it, you know. But now you're gonna see that again. So thanks for showing up, Pragmatic. Let's see who else we got. We got Scott Duke. We got Icarus. Got the usual gang here in the chat. Make sure you drop a like if you haven't done that already. But without further ado, we can get into the video. This one is, what channel is this from?
Well, is it worth plugging the channel? I'll look it up here in a second.
I mean, the link is in the description. Yeah. If you'd like to follow along or whatever, subscribe for more scientific evidence of the Shroud.
So the name of the channel is Good Shepherd Films. So
and they have 13,000 subscribers. So, like mid-tier. Well, okay, on the scale of YouTube, that's still pretty small, but like an order of magnitude more than we've got. So
yeah, and they do a lot of Shroud videos, so.
Which is why part of why I don't feel bad with the probably more sarcastic tone we're about to take, because we're punching up, and it's okay to punch up. You just can't punch down.
Yeah, and we will try to throw in a comment every once in a while, things that we would, if we were gonna debunk this more seriously, things that we would want to look into if we don't already know the answer, because I'm sure some of this stuff is pretty surface level. But
yeah. What's up? Real Seeker says probably still better than a show with Hugh Ferry. That is false. I think our show with Hugh Ferry is probably one of the most the best shows we've done on the Shroud. He's
one of my faves.
Definitely. I like to say that when it comes to Shroud of Turin skeptics, you've got Hugh Ferry at home. That's that's what we are. Okay, let's get this show on the road. So, hold on.
The UV light necessary to simulate the Shroud image exceeds the maximum power released by all UV light sources available today.
Now, I'll say, like, he wastes no time with an elaborate intro. He just boom right in there, lightning bolt. I don't know if he made all those images. I imagine that's the kind of thing that takes a long time to do, and he's super proud of it, even though and to be fair, I don't know that I could do better, but I'm also not trying. So.
Yeah, it's pretty good editing skills. Yeah. We're already starting with some pretty crazy claims, though. So.
Yeah, he said more powerful than. I should probably actually listen to what he's saying.
You're so baffled by the graphics there.
UV light necessary to simulate the Shroud image exceeds the maximum power released by all UV light sources available today.
Okay, so he said that the UV light exceeds all sources available today. I thought when I first read it, it was all UV sources available, combined. Which
would be a lot of UV light.
That would be a lot of UV light. Considering I'm pretty sure, at least I seem to recall, and I'm sure Dale in the comments knows it off the top of his head, but I seem to recall there was an experiment with radiation where they ended up burning through the cloth, but I don't remember if that was UV or it might have been a different kind of radiation. If it was UV, then burning through the cloth level is definitely enough. Anyway,
it would require pulses having durations shorter than 1/40 billionth of a second, and intensities on the order of several billion watts.
That's a lot of watts. Several billion, otherwise known as a gigawatt.
1.21 gigawatts.
It's a gigawatt. That is a lot of power for scale. A nuclear reactor, like a good sized nuclear reactor, usually puts out 1,000 watts, 1,000 megawatts. Sorry, so 1 gigawatt. So this would be, he's saying, the output of a few nuclear reactors, but only for a billionth of a second. So we do have enough, we can generate that much power, but I don't know if anyone's thought to hook it up to a UV light.
Also, but these are just unfounded claims, by the way, too. There's
maybe we're in the first 30 seconds.
Okay.
Maybe this guy's going to give us evidence.
Of course, he is.
Jared. This guy says new scientific evidence for the Shroud. You wouldn't make a title like that unless you had scientific evidence.
You're right.
Yeah, YouTube titles are never misleading.
I was being uber skeptical there. So.
Did it break? Did I break it?
I think too many megawatts.
It would require pulses having durations shorter than 1/40 billionth of a second, and intensities on the order of several billion watts.
Love the graphics.
We would need a dead body to create the bloodstains we see on the Shroud.
And where would we find a dead body?
We would need a living body to create the body images. This was a 2-step image process. The blood was first, and then 3 days later, the body images were created over the bloodstains. So the forensic evidence on this cloth tells a story of a dead body that becomes a living body, a resurrection.
And that's the actual cemetery. This is the place, guys. We found it. Yeah, content warning. As my, this is not going to be epilepsy friendly, so you may want to just listen to it on audio if you have problems with strobing lights.
For whatever reason, doing research in regards to the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus is not exactly on the priority list in most people's lives, even ranking last on that list if it is even there at all. Even though, according to Scripture, we have an upcoming meeting with this person named Jesus, in which the Bible states that not acknowledging his sacrifice during our lifetime could have serious, eternal consequences.
Serious consequences, guys. So
Yeah.
I guess that's a person supposed to be burning in hell.
Yeah, that's definitely a person burning in hell.
Yeah. So, is his voice intentionally bad or just like it's very intense sounding? And I guess the echoing is got to be intentional, right? Maybe it's just
That's definitely some reverb and stuff put on in post. He's done that intentionally, and given the editing skills, I don't think he would let the voice go without.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the best representation of hell I've ever seen. Though I have been actually thinking about how this isn't the purpose of this video, I don't think. But like I've been thinking about it. I had a discussion about the problem of evil and like suffering somewhat recently. And I forget I think it was on the old whatever proselytize or apostatize became afterwards.
There was
Faith
like 20
Faith
different
Unaltered.
names.
Faith Unaltered. And they had a guy on there who was a universalist, and I think he's convinced me. I think that if God exists, I think that universalism is true. Like no hell. But anyway, that's not the point of this video. Completely side tangent.
No one can prove that Jesus is not the risen Messiah, or that he did not die on the cross for the sins of mankind. So why gamble with eternity, especially when there is forensic evidence that backs up what is written both in the Old Testament and the New Testament?
There's our pollen.
So nobody can prove that he's not.
And that he didn't. Yeah.
And that he didn't. So nobody can prove he isn't did not rise from the dead, and nobody can prove that did not lead to saving the world, right? Yeah, okay. So nobody can prove that it's not. That doesn't mean I should believe it, though. That's not how claims work. Like, if you want me to,
yeah, he's doing a Pascalian wager here, though, too, right? So
that's true. He is doing Pascal's wager, or at least the modern conception of it, which we have an episode on that. I'd have it at my fingertips if I'd done prep work like a good host, but you can just find it. But yeah, the Pascal's wager is basically like you've got nothing to lose and all eternity to gain if you believe it, right? But that's not how belief works. I can't just like believe that this is real, right?
Yeah, and he's essentially turned this on his head to say you can't prove he didn't die and didn't resurrect, so you might as well act like he did because the consequences are so bad if you don't.
Yeah, but like Homer Simpson said, what if we pick the wrong God, you know? What if we pick the wrong one and then the real God's just getting madder and madder every time we go to church?
But his argument's more sophisticated than that because he has forensic evidence to support that he did.
You're right.
One of those being pollen from a thorn.
Okay.
Which we've talked about.
Gambling with eternity is not smart, and it is also unnecessary. There is no downside to believing, but there is potentially a huge downside to not believing.
Yeah, so if my face turns to that when I go to hell, that's a huge downside. Okay.
But if believing makes me make videos like this, that's a downside, you know. Free thinker, you can't prove you didn't die to keep Taco Bell in business. Taco Bell's still in business.
That's true.
So, and also Odin said he would get rid of frost giants. See any frost giants? There you go. There's no downside, bro. I love sleeping in on Sunday. Like that's like one of my favorite things. I'd have to go to church if I was gonna be good, and you know.
Yeah. So here's a downside: if you're a adherent to tithing, that's 10% of your income at least gone. That's a downside.
Jared, I can't live on 100% of my income. I can only live on 90%.
Okay, it's true. Huh?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, but in all seriousness, though, there are definitely downsides. Like,
for sure.
It's costly to be to be a part of a religious tradition, it has demands placed upon you, and if you're going to be a good member of that community, like it comes with benefits too, don't get me wrong, but like there are things that are required of you if you're going to be a part of this group. That's a cost. It's not zero.
Well, also think about this. I mean, we're obviously in a Western culture here in America where it's not that big a deal, but there are places in the world where being a Christian has real impacts, and you could be, killed, maimed, ostracized. So,
sure, if you lived in one of those other countries, if you live in a Western country, particularly America, you are not being persecuted. If you're a Christian, you're not being persecuted. Period.
but that would be a downside. He made a blanket statement. So
yeah,
yeah,
true. Yes.
A serious downside, to say the least. The Shroud of Turin is a witness who speaks to us in the form of 21st century forensic science and is saying to everyone, do not lose faith and trust in the Word of God. It is accurate. It directs us to return back to reading the Word of God with renewed faithfulness. And it is also a warning sign that we will talk about more at the end of the video.
Oh,
this
teaser.
Okay, first of all, the like moving around thing is really makes me feel like I'm already drunk. But this has really strong vibes of like Ancient Aliens.
Yes, or Unsolved Mysteries.
Unsolved Mysteries. That's what I was thinking of. Yes, this is straight from the Unsolved Mysteries era.
He might have worked for Unsolved Mysteries in the 80s. You never know.
this might be Jonathan Frakes. This might...
Oh man,
I would totally listen to him do an episode on the Shroud of Turin. That would be amazing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like the sign of Jonah was a warning sign to repent, the shroud is also a warning sign to repent before it's too late. And when we say repent, that means feeling remorse or regret over past wrongdoings and making a resolve to change.
But not saying you're sorry to the person who you actually wronged. They don't need to be involved.
No, this isn't a 12-step program, okay?
Right. The person you actually did harm to, God'll take care of it. It'll be fine. Yeah. Don't worry about that. All hail the All-Father. Yes. All hail Odin. I loved Unsolved Mysteries. It's like one of my favorite things. And I still love is probably too much. I still enjoy the Ancient Aliens thing, though the like paternalistic colonial mindset of it at times is like I don't like that part. Like how could brown people have made big structures? Like that part I don't care about. When they're just talking about Atlantis or something, that's fun.
Yeah, I loved Unsolved Mysteries growing up. It was my favorite TV show.
What was the show where the guy who played Riker, Jonathan Frakes, right? Name's Jonathan, whatever, Frakes, something like that. Where he would tell the story and then reveal whether it was a true story or not at the end.
Ooh, I never remember that one.
Oh, that was such a good one.
If you remember that show in the chat, let us know. So
yeah.
So over the top.
Oh man. That's like some middle school PowerPoint animation right there.
Oh man, the sound effects.
A new test was done recently to determine the age of the Shroud of Turin using an X-ray scattering test.
Called it.
The X-ray technique is superior to carbon dating for determining the age of the fabric fibers. This was a non-destructive test that was done by illuminating a sample of the shroud fabric with an X-ray beam. This type of test reveals more information about the crystal structure, chemical composition, and physical properties of the sample being tested. In this case, a sample of the shroud fabric.
As Real Seeker said, it's really the narrator. I don't know why the video is like covering up the chat. It's kind of annoying, but oh well. Anyway, yeah. If this was being narrated with someone with a British accent, then that would be a totally different story. But yeah,
but it's not though. So
it's not.
Our souls are doomed. So
yeah. So I figured he'd be talking about the waxes thing. We hear about this thing Beyond Belief. I think that was it. I think that was the name of the show. Such a good show. I loved it so much. It's so good. I guess it appealed to my skeptical self, as a teenager. But yeah, so we hear about this dating method all the time in the comments because it's an X-ray. It's WAX, that's wide angle X-ray scattering is the name of the dating method. And basically what they purport to do, he's probably going to talk more about it, but I'm just going to talk about it instead because it's my show. You basically, they shoot it at the threads, and the idea is you can analyze the crystal structure to see how much is degraded over time, and it's non-destructive. So when he says it's superior to the carbon dating, that's could mean a lot of things. One way in which it would actually be superior is it's a non-destructive test, because if you do the carbon dating, you have to light some of the shroud on fire, and that's not great,
Right. He did highlight that it was superior than carbon dating for dating the shroud specifically, not just that it was a superior dating method in general.
So that is not a claim that I think is justified. So the Wax's method was created by researchers who study the Shroud of Turin. That's like their primary focus. And it was created to study the Shroud of Turin. Now, if the method ends up being reliable, then it could be applicable to all kinds of textiles from antiquity, from ancient times. But to the best of my knowledge, and please correct me in the chat, I've been on the lookout for papers about this, but I haven't seen any. But it's entirely possible I've missed them. But as of the last time I looked, which was like at most last year, nobody beyond the researchers who invented the method have tested it and used it. I've seen other researchers in the field saying, oh, that's an interesting idea that has promise, but nobody actually vetting it. So that means that their results haven't been replicated. And most importantly, the limits of this testing method haven't been stress tested. The guys who invented it tested it. They tested the shroud, and look, it came to the ancient date. What do you know? What a coincidence. But is this actually appropriate to date textiles? Are there reasons why the Shroud of Turin wouldn't be a good candidate or not? What are some limitations? What are some confounding factors? These are all the things that are also true of carbon dating. There's all kinds of pitfalls that you can run into with carbon dating that have been run into because it's been a dating method that's been used for decades. Right. And
had this gone through peer review, other people would have tried to duplicate
it. Has gone through. To be clear, it has gone through peer review.
Not that kind of peer review, though.
It's been so they published a paper. The paper itself is peer reviewed.
I'm talking about a scientific method peer review where other people try to replicate your experiment. Yeah, that's what I meant by that.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, it's a superior method. It gives you the date that it wants.
Right.
So, I mean,
yeah. So let's hear. Maybe he knows. Maybe he's going to cite a more recent paper or something, though.
This new peer-reviewed research shows the Shroud of Turin is around 2,000 years old, in agreement with all the other tests and research done on the age of the shroud, with the exception of the carbon dating. However, the carbon dating results do not even qualify as bad science. It is.
So what he's got there on the screen, for those who are just listening, says shell. It's a super deep fried image, but whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. Shells from living snails were carbon dated as being 27,000 years old. No citation, but I happen to know what he's talking about. So it's true that certain shells of marine creatures that are very recent have been dated as being very old. This is used often by creationists to say, oh, look, carbon dating is useless. No, it means that carbon dating can't be used reliably on the shells of certain creatures in freshwater systems. It's called the reservoir effect. What's happening is the C14 in the shell, they're not getting it directly from the atmosphere. They're getting it filtered through their reservoir, the water, which is depleted. It doesn't have as much carbon-14 as the atmosphere does. And so they just don't have as much C14 in their bodies as plants on land would have. Mm-hmm. So often, and he doesn't cite anything, but often creationists will cite a paper saying, look, they pointed out, the paper they're citing are scientists saying, hey, guys, we found this effect. So be aware, don't use carbon dating in this scenario. It's a tool. Tools have limits, You just don't use it then. Jared, maybe you can help me out. The Shroud of Turin, is it a shell from a living snail?
It was a kind of a shell because it was on a body that no, it's not.
Yeah, it is not.
It's not.
Real Seekers asked a question. The AMS C14 method, which is atomic mass spectrometry, it's the as opposed to counting, it's the method they use now for radiocarbon dating. That method was only 10 years old in 1988, and there were tests showing it was a flawed method for textiles. Would you guys have believed the C14 back in 1989 or not, as you do with waxes? So I think that's when this particular methodology for carbon dating came out. That methodology was new. It was still a version of carbon dating, so the underlying physics were well understood, and a lot of the same pitfalls would apply to both. So it wasn't coming up from scratch.
Right.
So I don't think it's completely analogous. But to your point, and we mentioned this in our first episode on our carbon dating series, right after, like a year or two after the carbon dating was done on the Shroud, there was a big symposium of all like the carbon dating people. They came together and did a bunch of tests and found that, hey, our cleaning methods are not as good as we would like. Differences in cleaning methods are leading to larger error bars.
Sure.
So we should fix those, and that is particularly important on textiles. So I think that I don't think I wouldn't be as negative about it as I am about waxes, because waxes is a completely novel method, right? Completely novel.
Yeah, your apples and oranges here too. Like waxes was designed specifically to test the Shroud, where AMS was not designed for that purpose and had broader range for reasons why it was done. And they were trying to improve upon an already existing testing method. So,
and it had been done more than once.
And it had been vetted, and yes.
Right. So I think that I would be less confident in the AMS method in 1989 than I am currently confident in it, because now it's been around for 40 years almost. But
would you be more confident than you are on waxes, though?
Yeah, I'd be more confident than I am on waxes. Yeah. Just because at that time it would have had more of a background than waxes does. Now, I'll lay this out right now. If other members of the field, textile experts, relevant experts, pick up the waxes method, they try it on a bunch of artifacts, and it becomes accepted in the community, well,
sure.
then now the waxes results are super important, and like that would cause us to need to reevaluate to like what that is now a new really good piece of evidence that we need to factor into whatever model we're going to use. We now have to explain both of these pieces of evidence, right? Whereas right now my explanation is that's interesting, we should keep an eye on it, but okay, back to snails.
More a study of what a group of people will do to get funding for their labs and job promotions. The carbon dating test had nothing to do with science and everything to do with greed, deception, and fraud. It is a story about a group of people that got paid 1 million British pounds to say fake. The skeptic's favorite scientific analysis word. The carbon dating test is a dead cat. The sample dated had aluminum mordant and other metallic salts, madder rose dye, and cotton in it, contaminated with foreign materials.
Okay, so it is true that the labs that were doing this test weren't simply and only interested in dating the Shroud. There were ulterior motives in that they had a new method. They had all these labs. They wanted to be able to do something that would advertise their method. like, yeah, that's all true. That doesn't mean that they weren't also motivated to do good work, right? Because like, if you do the testing and it turns out your results are crap or completely useless, that's not a good test, right?
Right.
So, and also it's like, yeah, they were paid. I don't know if that £1 million is accurate. I have no idea whether it is or not. I mean, split among 3 different labs.
Like, how much does it cost to actually do that stuff in general? Like, what does
I know the carbon dating test itself isn't expensive, but they also had a whole team of scientists that were involved. So I don't know what this £1 million, whatever.
This is the first I've ever heard about the money and because I don't think people got rich off of the Shroud.
No, nobody was getting rich off of this test. Like nobody was walking away with flipping out Benjamins from this thing. They did want publicity. That's fair enough. But I don't think that in itself is like evidence of any kind of nefarious things. Now, he mentioned there that there was dye and cotton fibers, which we've gone over in our carbon dating series, the cotton fibers specifically. Basically, there are traces of cotton in the Shroud of Turin. But the shroud would be it's woven in linen, so made from flax, not cotton. And so the argument goes, oh, well, look, in the sample area there's cotton, so it's a blended fabric. It's not the same as the fabric elsewhere in the shroud. That shows it's a patch. That's the idea.
Yeah.
But that's not the only explanation for what we observe, right? Because there's just minute bits of cotton. Like, it's not like, oh, you look at it like there's like it's a blended cloth. Like there's cotton threads and there's linen threads. That's not how it is, right? You can only see the cotton if you like take apart the linen threads, and you'll find certain like little bits of cotton inside the threads.
Yep. There's two things going on here. One is that. The other thing is it seems to me that he's trying to poison the well and saying that the entire carbon-14 dating needs to be thrown away because they had contamination in it, and he's talking about all kinds of contamination.
Well,
in the
he doesn't
sample.
say anything about whether that contamination is such that it would alter the results. It doesn't say anything about whether like the cleaning methods would do anything about it. He doesn't say anything about that. He just says there's contamination, then leaves it to the watcher to assume that means the results are trash.
You know who does say stuff about that though? We do in our.
We do. Yeah, go watch our other videos. Yeah.
That is a provable fact. That means the test is what? Drum roll, please. Inadmissible evidence.
Based on what? Based on who? Who says? Like, there's cotton fibers in it. There, like if there's cotton, thou shalt acquit. I don't understand the argument.
I don't think he does either.
All the forensic evidence on the shroud points to this as being an ancient cloth.
Thor's hammer.
Ray Rogers, an expert chemist from the Los Alamos National Explosives Laboratory. But Ray found that the fibrils on the shroud fabric have severe electromagnetic radiation damage.
Okay, so one thing I have to point out, and they say this every time, and I never understand it. Like, Ray Rogers, he's from the Los Alamos Weapons Lab. Okay.
So?
Like, okay, he makes bombs. Why does that qualify him to study a shroud? Like, I'm sure he was a smart guy and he seemed well respected in his field. I'm not saying that means he's not an expert, but like, what does his weapons stuff have to do with the Shroud of Turin? Like, that's nothing to do with it. It just means, oh, look at this professional smart guy said this thing. That's all it means. Oh, hey, look, Otangela's in the car. Have you not asked to get your $1 million prize yet? So what Otangelo is mentioning is there is a prize out there by some guy who I guess has $1 million. And he says, if you can show how the image was made or how the Shroud of Turin was created, you'll get $1 million. And get this in our comments all the time. Oh, well, if you know so much, why don't you go claim the $1 million? Okay. It's not that simple. First of all, even if we knew exactly how the Shroud of Turin was made down to the largest detail, I had to convince this other guy to give me $1 million for it. Really? It doesn't matter what I tell him. He has 1 million reasons not to give me any money, you know? So I doubt the sincerity of the offer to begin with. But it's worse than that because I don't have the Shroud of Turin to do tests on, right? And I don't have lab equipment. I don't have the relevant expertise to do these tests. So I'd have to go hire people. I'd have to spend probably $1 million or more just to do the tests necessary. And I can't even do them because they won't give me the shroud. So like it's a completely dead offer. It's not real. It's a stunt. It's not an authentic offer.
Do you think James Randi, remember him? He had the offer if somebody could prove a miracle. Do you think he would have paid?
James Randi, maybe. I think he would have paid. Look, excuses. Otangelo, I can't quit my job. I have children I have to feed, right? They can't eat hopes and dreams. I'd have to quit my job. I'd have to go back to school, probably for a decade, right? Just so I could get a doctorate in a relevant field, somehow convince the Pope to give me the Shroud of Turin, get a lab, hire other experts, spend all this money in the hopes that at the end, this random asshole would give me $1 million. That's insane. No one would do that. That's crazy. Like,
which is why nobody's done it.
Yeah, it's whatever. Okay. Anyways.
The same level of electromagnetic radiation damage as the linen wrappings of the Dead Sea Scrolls that we know are over 2,000 years old.
Man, I wish we had Kip in the chat today because he'd know about this. So Ray Rogers was a chemist who was involved with the Shroud of Turin research, and he was a skeptic, famously, who was convinced that the Shroud of Turin, he still didn't necessarily believe it was authentic, but he thought it was 2,000 years old. So he thought it was like the radiocarbon dating was wrong. He thought it was old. I don't think he necessarily believed that it was like a miracle, but anyway, he's convinced about that part, right? And he pointed to a lot of different factors to that convinced him. We've mentioned in several of our carbon dating episodes. The most recent one, we talked about him. One of them, electromagnetic damage. He saw, you basically look at the fibers through like an optical, you like shine light through it and you can see damage. That assumes a lot about the history of the Shroud. The Shroud hasn't exactly been kept in like a neat, pristine area. So I don't know. And it was kept in a very different environment than any Dead Sea Scrolls would be. So I don't know how comparable those two things would be. Like even if you told me that the level of damage is identical between the two, that wouldn't actually tell me anything, right? You'd need to do a lot more work in order for those two data points to matter.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I have a known date of something, and I know it has this much. So I'm just looking for something that has the same date with the same damage, then I can say that it's...
Yeah. I mean, look, if I have an apple that I've kept in the fridge, right, and then I take another apple and I set it out in the sun in a swamp, then I should just compare the damage levels between the two and it's fine, right? Yeah, that's basically what's happening here.
The Shroud and the Dead Sea Scrolls must be roughly the same age.
No.
There is no way the Shroud comes from a medieval time period. And the fibrils of the Sudarium of Oviedo, the headcloth mentioned in John 26, also had this same level of electromagnetic radiation damage.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the hammer. So the Sudarium of Oviedo, which I've been meaning to do an episode on forever, we just haven't done it, is this bloody cloth that is associated in legend with the Shroud of Turin. Allegedly, that was like the face covering and was thrown on the ground or whatever.
It's got so many points of congruency too with the... Oh my gosh.
That's what they say. I don't want to say they're wrong because I haven't like looked into it in detail, but man, I don't see it.
It looks like a Rorschach mask.
Yeah, seriously. But in any case, that thing is interesting because it also has been carbon dated. And you want to guess like whether it dated to the Middle Ages, like the 13th century or the first?
I already know the answer, but so I'm not going to guess.
The answer is neither. It dated in like the 700s.
It was like 600 to 700, yeah.
Right. So like it matched neither of the other two things. But hey, don't worry about that. That little guy. Don't worry about that little guy. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's closer to 100 though, so it's better.
Now there are ways to explain this away if you are sufficiently motivated. For instance, if you are Bob Rucker and an asshole, and also have this idea that there's like neutron radiation or whatever, and the Sudarium was like in a specific spot, so just enough neutron radiation to be you can get there if you really, really want to, but I don't want to. So since it covered the same person, we already know the 14th century dating is well. Yeah, I mean, if you assume that you're correct.
John 20, verse 7. And the napkin that was about his head was not lying with the linen clothes, the linen grave clothes, but was wrapped together in a place by itself. What John was referring...
Is that like some random terrorist that's like...
Are we getting ready to watch a like execution video? Yeah. What's going on here?
Hey, do you have like... This is your screen that's being shared, right? Can you speed it up to like 1.5?
I cannot, but I can work on that in the background as we watch this one.
Okay.
Is this cloth we're looking at right now. This was put around the head of Jesus while he was on the cross and then removed during the burial. And as we can see, this cloth is just covered in blood and fluid from the lungs that came out of the nose and mouth of Jesus. So when they removed it, it was just covered in blood like this.
When they say enhanced, they mean enhanced, because that shit doesn't look anything like that. Like, that is some creative liberties with the pattern.
This is a mixture of fluid from the lungs and blood, and we have that same type of blood and serum coming from the side wound on the shroud. So both the shroud and the headcloth have type AB blood, the rarest blood type in the world, but it is 600% more common in Jewish people from northern Israel.
Okay, citation needed on that part. But the AB thing, it's an interesting blood type for a couple reasons. One of those reasons is that when you're doing testing on blood to see what blood type it is for old blood like this, you're testing for the antigens, right? So A blood has B antigens, B blood has A antigens, and AB doesn't have either. I think that's how it went. I'm citing off memory from when we did our Hugh Ferry discussion. That's where we talked about it. Well, doesn't have either covers AB blood. It also covers blood that's just too degraded to detect anything. So a result of AB is equivalent to a result of, could be anything, I don't know. And so you get a result of, and they're like, oh, well, clearly it's AB, the rarest blood type of them all. No, this you think it's 2,000 years old. I think it's 700 years old. Either way, that's pretty damn old. Maybe it's just too degraded to tell, right? Like, yeah. Also, blood's not exactly hard to come by. I see this all the time too. Oh, there's blood on the shroud. There's blood from an actual human being. Where could it have come from? Where could you possibly get human blood from? In Europe in the 15th century. Where could you possibly get human blood from?
I can't think of a single place.
No.
I have it pulled up here if we want to watch it on the other.
Prixie says AB has both. I just go to the interview we did with Hugh Ferry. The bottom line is, I don't remember the mechanics, but I do remember distinctly the fact is that a null result is equivalent to an AB result. That's the punchline. And so you can't tell with the test they did whether it is an AB or null. The test doesn't tell you distinguish between those two. There are other tests you could do that would distinguish that haven't been done, to the best of my knowledge.
Yes, where Nazareth is, where the mother of Jesus was born. It's also type AB blood high in bilirubin, which is proof of a violent death. Both claws have type AB blood with myrrh and aloes. And finally, both the shroud and the headcloth have type AB blood that was exposed to pollens from a thorn plant from Jerusalem.
So, okay, first of all, the bilirubin thing shows the person, the argument goes, shows the person the blood came from was being stressed and in pain. Where could you possibly get human blood from? Okay, maybe you can find human blood, but human blood from a person in pain, Jared? How are you going to get that?
If they're bleeding, they might be in pain.
Now, get the skeptical nonsense out of here. It's got bilirubin, therefore it's Jesus. And this pollen thing is an old debunked claim. So basically, there are pollen on the shroud, and the species or the type of pollen that you find there, the plants are there, are in the Jerusalem area. They are also in Turkey and in Greece and in Italy,
every other
France, and everywhere else. You can't tell from it is extremely difficult in most cases to tell what specific species that the pollen is from. And so the original botanist who claimed this, his work has later been refuted by other botanists who say you can't get to that level of detail. So there's pollen there. It doesn't rule out Jerusalem, but it also doesn't rule out basically anywhere else in the Mediterranean. So yeah, that nosebleed we'd really hurt. Guys, man, he got like socked right in the face and stuff.
So this is not just an AB blood match, but AB blood with very specific markers, a very special sequence of unique numbers.
Oh my.
Matching numbers 60. Is this like, are we getting some numerology stuff here? Is that what's happening?
No, I think he's tallying up all the blood markers for Shroud of Turin and then the headcloth and saying they compare identical, so they must be proof.
But
that
like,
it's-
why 69? Nice. But why 69? Why 12? Why 21? I don't understand. Whatever. I guess we'll find out.
To explain this better, we're switching to screen record format for this display. Both the shroud and the headcloth both have the same rare blood type, the rarest blood type in the world. That's a unique number. We'll call that 69. Both laws have high bilirubin content in the blood.
Okay. To be fair, if you're gonna pick a random number, 69 is the number I'd pick.
We'll just call it that though. Like, yeah.
Right, but why? Like, okay, so 69. Okay, I understand. But the rest, what's going on there? Okay.
So there may be an actual reason.
That's another unique number. Number 3, both the shroud and the headcloth have fluid from the lungs mixed in with the blood. It's another unique characteristic.
Prixie wants to know what the units are of those numbers. I don't know, gigawatts, I guess. He's seeking deep within the cave of truth. Right, he's literally in Jesus' tomb right now.
Yeah.
Another unique number. Both the shroud and the headcloth have pollens from a thorn plant mixed in with the blood. That's another unique number. Both the shroud and the headcloth have blood stains that reside on a piece of cloth that has the exact same level of severe electromagnetic radiation damage.
This going back and forth is disorienting as hell.
But first of all, like if this is literally how they're doing their research and they're just assigning random numbers to things, saying, but they match, like
so
that's another unique match point. And then finally, both the shroud and the headcloth have blood with myrrh and aloes in it. Now the headcloth,
not myrrh and aloe. Okay.
You mean a common skin ointment for somebody that's died? Like,
Right. Yeah. Why would they get that? Okay. So I guess what he's saying is it's kind of like a lotto. He's just picking random numbers and they happen to match up. I guess that's like the vibe he's going for. Yeah. Okay.
So if you do play lotto, play those numbers tonight, though. So
that's a good point. Yeah. Milligrams per liter of magic. Yeah. It's basically, I don't know, or isn't this amazing? Therefore, God, basically. Type AB blood could just as easily be null. High bilirubin, citation needed. But even if it's true, okay, blood has bilirubin in sometime. Lung fluid, I haven't seen good evidence that there is lung fluid. I'm not saying there's not. I don't know. He doesn't cite anything, so I have no idea. Thorn plant, nonsense. Same radiation, also nonsense. Myrrh and aloes, cool.
was authenticated as being the property of Jesus in the year 1075. So we're comparing the blood on the Shroud of Turin to an item that is said to be in the year 10 level of severe electromagnetic radiation damage. That's another unique match point. And then finally, both the shroud and the headcloth have blood with myrrh and aloes in it. Now the headcloth was authenticated as being the property of Jesus in the year 1075.
Okay, so I didn't miss anything. He just said it.
He just said it. Wait, that's pretty important.
That is a very specific date. I'm going to write that date down to look at later because March 14th, 1075. That's a very specifically specific.
So we're comparing the blood on the Shroud of Turin to an item that is said to be, that was authenticated to be the property of Jesus in the year 1075. March 14th, about 1,400 years ago. And to this day, the headcloth still is kept in that same ark, covered in silver that has an inscription, the sacred sudarium of our Lord Jesus Christ.
So what?
Yeah. Authenticated by who? How? What kinds? Yeah, exactly. It was kept in a box that said it was from Jesus. Guys, it's got his name literally
also,
on the box.
1,000 years after the dude apparently died.
It's 1,000 years later, man. Like, 1,000 years later, you go into a room with a box that says this shit belonged to Joe. Like,
okay, it's authenticated. Okay,
it's cool.
Can I see your
calculated odds of probability and chance that these match points are coincidental and this is not the same blood from the same person is somewhere in the 1 in 10 million range.
Based on fucking what? Based on. I demand to see this math right now.
It's not exact. It's somewhere in the 1 in 10 million. Okay.
Oh man.
This is horrible.
Included a note in Fat Aramaic handwriting. Jesus was here. It's signed or something.
And if we add in the facial points of congruency from the shroud to the headcloth, we have a near mathematical certainty. Positive ID. This is the blood of Jesus.
And we're just gonna leave it. We're just gonna move along.
But just add it in there, positive. But I'm not gonna tell you how or why.
Don't worry, they match. Did you see the pictures? Clearly. All right, here we go.
Julio Fonte is a mechanical engineer and associate professor of mechanical and thermal measurements at the Department of Industrial Engineering in Italy. In response to email questions, Mr. Fonte explained his methods to determine the date of the shroud. This involved illuminating a substance with a laser and analyzing the light that is scattered off the surface of the substance. Bottom line.
Okay, this video is amazing. I've completely changed my mind. This is one of my favorite videos of the Shroud of Turin ever.
The laser. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was awesome.
We're gonna get so much hate for laughing.
Oh my god. Okay. Keep it together. We're professionals.
The 3 separate tests show the linen fibers of the shroud to have been woven into the cloth around 33 BC.
I think Fonte did the waxes test. I think that's what he's talking about. So I think he's harking back to the waxes test at the beginning. I'm quoting off memory.
I'm not sure about that one. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Fonte did the waxes test. Prixie, you guys should clone Jesus with the DNA from his butt. Bro, that would be amazing. Totes. I'm in. If there's a GoFundMe to clone Jesus, I'm in.
Wait, if you clone Jesus, does he dematerialize where he is and then pop back in? Like, how does that work?
I don't know. Does he get sold?
And is he still, part man, part God, or would he be full man at that point?
I think at that point, because we made him, he'd be fully man, right? But it would be another virgin birth, though.
It would be.
Yeah,
you're right.
Captive Death says on 14th March 1075, King Alfonso and Roderick and El Cid opened the chest after days of fasting. The event was recorded on a document preserved in the Capitular archives at the Cathedral of San Salvador, Oviedo. Hey, you know what? If King Alfonso and El Cid said it, then by God, it must be true, right? So, I think Marcus is yelling at us for laughing at it. Show some respect. I promise you, Marcus, we are giving this video 100% of the respect it deserves.
I'm sorry. No. So laughing at that laser, it wasn't about the video and the content. It was more about the special effects, the blinking random lasers.
So amazing. I love it. I love it so much.
Take 250 years. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls.
Let me know, chat, if that's too loud. It's blown out my eardrums, but I can't tell if it's too loud for you. It just suddenly spiked.
For it is in the blood that makes atonement for the soul.
We got atonement theology here. So.
The authenticity of the shroud is primarily simply a question of, well, is this a real crime? Was there a real person? Was there a real person who was scourged and crucified in this cloth?
He suddenly became a toddler trying to avoid bedtime. But was there? But was there? Okay. I looked it up. Fonte did not do the waxes, so it sounds vaguely familiar. Fonte shooting with lasers that looked exactly like that. I saw the picture. God, I don't remember what Fonte did with his lasers though. Maybe I'm sure Real Seekers will leave it in the comments. So if this is in the future, go check the comments. I'm sure he'll tell me. Flintnapper says it's very weird and I love it. Yeah, this video is amazing. I am 100% in now. I'm all in on this. See another dapper bow tie wearer is in the chat. Hate sucks. Okay. Let's keep going. This is excellent.
If we were in a court of law, the only testimony that would be credible, one in which we could base a decision beyond reasonable doubt, would be from a battlefield surgeon, for example. Dr. Pierre Barbet, the authenticity of the shroud.
Wait, that's the only one?
From the point of view of anatomy and physiology is a scientific fact.
He doesn't have the body. What is he? Dr. Pierre said so. Like argumentum ad Pierum, I guess. Maybe he goes into it. I don't want to presume.
I'm sure he gives.
Dr. Robert Buckland.
Nope.
Okay, I guess not. Well, he said it. I mean, who am I? Okay.
Who did an estimated 25,000 autopsies, considered one of the top forensic pathologists in the world. The markings on this image are so clear and so medically accurate, the pathological facts would say the suffering and death of the man depicted here are beyond dispute.
Well, no. No, I'm not going to let this slide. Did he just swipe one slide with the exact same slide?
No, I think what he was doing, he was overlaying an image of a flail to show that the lines line up where the markings are on the body.
But as we discussed with
Hugh Ferry,
or was it Hugh? I think it was Hugh.
Yeah, he pulls up. Yeah.
We don't have a Roman flagrum like sitting around. They use the markings to come up like they're like, hey, I made this thing based on what's on the Shroud of Turin. Look, they match. What do you know?
We have no examples of flagrum that look exactly like that. So.
Right. So, and even if we did, suppose we did, you have to remember what's the competing hypothesis. One of the competing, if it's not magical, then it was man-made in some way. Probably. Well, I guess Ray Rogers believed it was made through some corpse air and a chemical reaction. I don't know. I don't buy that personally.
Off-gassing, basically.
Yeah, maybe, but I haven't seen sufficient evidence to say. But in any case, say it was an artist who did it through some unknown method because nobody knows how it was done. That is the alternate hypothesis. This person had the biblical accounts, right? So the fact that it I heard this too, oh look, it matches the story of the Bible. Yeah, they had the Bible in the 14th century, my guy. Captain Desk talking about the Sudarium again. He says the king had an oak chest covered in silver with an inscription which reads, "The sacred Sudarium of our Lord Jesus Christ." So I fully buy. I am 100% sold that in the 11th century, or heck, even in the 8th century, it was revered as a relic. Totally. That's fine. A lot of stuff were revered.
Along with hundreds of other relics.
Right. How many foreskins of Jesus were floating around?
Yeah, the amount of pieces of the authentic Jesus cross you can go on eBay and buy right now.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So basically, El Cid and the king believed it was true in the 11th century. Therefore, it's true.
Dr. Frederick Suggaby, chief medical examiner of Rockland County, New York, who spent 50 years of his life on this case file. Dr. Frederick Suggaby
case file
this cloth to be authentic. His response: I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever. Dr. Robert Buckland again. It's not an unreasonable conclusion for the forensic pathologist to determine that only one person historically has undergone this sequence of events. That person is Jesus Christ.
Only one person. What sequence of events? He doesn't say, right? He doesn't say. But if the sequence of events has to do with being crucified by the Romans and the various tortures that go along with it, so many people went through that. So many just in Jerusalem alone, that according to Josephus, who may be exaggerating, but this is the kind of story he was telling in the lifetime of other people who would have been aware of the situation. They literally ran out of lumber. They were crucifying so many people, right? People are crucified all day, every day in the Roman Empire.
That may be hyperbole, but the point is they're doing it a lot.
Yeah. They're doing it a lot, right? The free thinkers, he's referring back to the blood thing earlier. 600% more common in that demographic compared to what? Compared to all the other blood types, I guess. I mean, it's a big number, therefore true. So,
look at the sequence of events. The unique wounds in specific places: scourged and crucified, right side pierced, The cap of thorns, the puncture wounds around the head.
They had the Bible in the Middle Ages. Like,
Yeah,
how
I
do
mean,
people forget the Bible exists?
if I were to tell you to paint a picture based off of a Harry Potter novel, got it? I've been drinking, but you would be able to do a picture based off of the information you have.
And it has a
But
scar.
2,000 years from now, somebody's looking at your picture and goes, "How would he know that Harry Potter had a scar over his eye? How would he know?"
Because he had the book, obviously. Yeah. So, like,
Yep.
now, I guess it should be said that if this is the authentic cloth, then you'd also expect these kind of details to line up.
Sure, yeah.
Sure. But that means that it's not like a differentiating factor between the two. If it were done by a forger, one would expect he would do it according to the stories he had, what everyone expected, right?
If it were authentic, you wouldn't expect one piece of linen. You would expect wraps. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, don't worry about that.
Part of the beard is plucked out. Cheeks are bruised. The back has been plowed on. The body was laid in a long sheet of linen.
All right, real quick.
And
I know it's a simple thing, but the sound effects actually, it's a psychological thing to where he's making it sound like this is actual photographic evidence that is lending itself to be real. Now, we've been poking fun at that, but that's kind of a messing with your mind tactic. Anyways.
They tried it 40 years. Tried what? Leave more comments as to what exactly they tried. I think you mean it's not a forgery. Who tried? And one thing that's important to remember, because this is pointed out a lot, they'll say that, like, oh, scientists have studied it for decades. No, scientists have studied the work that was done by one small group of scientists over a week. They had 1 week with the Shroud. Now, they were fueled by cocaine and Red Bull, I guess. But like they had a
That's a joke,
week.
by the way. They weren't
It's
actually.
a joke. They were not.
Red Bull wasn't around back then.
You're right. That's true. Cocaine was. Cannot say whether they used it or not. Either way, doesn't matter. Point is that they only had a week with it. Now they did a bunch of tests, but this was done in the 70s, right? And then they again were able to examine it just for the carbon dating in the 80s. But like researchers, first of all, it's not like the world's like foremost researchers are bend their career on this thing, right? But more importantly, more to the point, they don't have access to the thing to study, so they can come up with all of these hypotheses, but they have no way to test them because they can't test them on the thing that they're trying to duplicate, right?
Yeah, this statement here is completely false. They had 1 week.
Right.
They may have been studying the results of that for over 40 years after that 1 week, but they've only been examining it. They only examined it for 1 week.
Right. He says they continued ever since. They continue to examine the data from that original thing, but it's not like they have had the Shroud in their possession, able to be studied for 40 years. This may be a surprise to some people. Science has progressed in the last 40 years or 50 years now, since the 70s. We have better tools now, right? So
also, just to go back to some of these professionals that we've been mentioning throughout this thing, or the Good Shepherd here has been mentioning, not all these experts or scientists were actually relevant to the field of what they were studying. I mean, we already have people who were in labs that are not relevant to textiles working on stuff, jet labs, all kinds of stuff. So it's not the best. They're just throwing it out there.
Body was removed from the linen before decomposition set in. And as a result of removing the body from this linen, there's some type of interaction between the cloth and the body, leaving behind what? A photo-negative X-ray holographic image.
That's nope.
With the resolution of that of a modern-day laser printer.
Okay, none of that stuff is accurate.
Have you seen it? Like, it's fuzzy. Like, you can barely tell the image. Now, once they invert it and like enhance it, it looks pretty nice, right? But
and it's not actually a photo negative, just so we're gonna get that clear. It's not literally a photo negative.
So when people, so that's another thing. People say, oh, it's a photo negative. They didn't have photography at the time. It's not a photo negative in the sense that that statement means it. So it's true when you take a photo, or you took a photo using older technology, you would get a negative image that you then had to turn into a positive image, right? And so when they say it's a photo negative, that's what they mean. They mean that the part that is closer, if the cloth were draped on a person and you're ignoring the whole distortion from it being like on all sides, ignore that for reasons. But if you just drape the cloth on a person's face, how close the skin would be to the cloth, that indicates how dark it is. Rather than the other way, where everything else is dark and you lighten up where the skin, like that's what it means by it being a negative. Now, I personally don't think that closer means darker when I'm adding pigment is like this crazy idea that could never have possibly been thought of. But anyways.
You ever heard of a lithograph or wood carvings, which are doing negatives? That's been an art form for centuries. Okay, I'm just throwing that out there.
Dr. Sebastiano Rodante, the perfect correspondence of the forehead blood clots gives us the certainty that the shroud covered the corpse of a man who, while alive, endured the lesion of these blood vessels. Professor Malcolm Cameron, a professor of forensic medicine, from the evidence of the blood stains alone, this is clearly not a human forgery. Dr. Gilbert Lavoie, there is no question there was a crucified man in this cloth. Direct contact between a body and the linen.
So Marcus says the problem is you're sick, atheistic, and you believe that science is God. Well, given the two competing options, science has given me porn on demand. Jesus has not. So of the two, one of them's doing more work for me.
Our atheism would also apply to the scientific God as well. Just so.
Yeah, true.
Dr. Max Fry, a forensic botanist, the head of the Forensic Science Police Department in Switzerland.
That's the guy, the botanist I mentioned earlier.
The pollen
the
guy.
pollen thing. That's him.
I can affirm without fear of being proven wrong, this cloth dates back to Palestine 2,000 years ago.
Spoiler, he was proven wrong.
He was proven wrong. Yeah. Look it up.
A Swiss textile expert in regards to the age of the cloth. There have been attempts to date the shroud, but the style of sewing is the biggest clue. It belongs firmly to a style seen in the 1st century AD or before.
So, interestingly, this expert, we've cited her in our last episode in the carbonating series. She does believe, as you can see from this quote, that the shroud is, I don't know if she thinks it's authentic, like actually Jesus. I haven't seen the statement to that effect, but she does think it was 1st century. Other textile experts disagree. Other textile experts think that the stitching is ambiguous. So I'm not a textile expert. I don't have any way really to assess a dispute between textile experts. So I can't say. She, though, interestingly, is one of the biggest names arguing against the patch hypothesis, which is why we were quoting her, because it was relevant to that. So it's almost like a double-edged sword if you're going to be careful,
Right. Somebody can offer expertise on a topic that's relevant and then go beyond that expertise and offer a conclusion that's not founded.
Yeah, but I'd say that the stitching pattern is well within the expertise of a textile expert.
Sure, but it's not like just because they use a stitching pattern in the 1st century, somebody who's making a relic can't say, you know what, I'm going to use this old stitching pattern.
Right. So again, I'm not a textile expert. We've talked in the past, there's textile experts on both sides who disagree. There's also textile experts who disagree with her on the patch thing. So,
Dr. John Heller, a biophysicist. The blood is in fact real blood, confirmed by presence of heme, porphyrins, bile pigments, and serum albumin. Confirmed also by spectrographic analysis. And what does that mean, Dr. Alan Adler? That means that the red stuff on the shroud is emphatically and without any reservation nothing else but blood.
And where could you possibly get blood, right? Where could you get blood?
Nowhere. Only from the body of Jesus.
Only from the only blood available at any point in human history is from crucified victims who are also the sons of God. That's it. You don't have to get blood
the only place.
Yeah.
Dr. Alan Adler goes on to say, most of the bloodstains on the shroud are the results of exudates of moistened blood clots that stain the cloth by direct contact with the dead body. While a few others, like the blood stains in the feet area and the horizontal blood flow pooling across the lower back, came from post-mortem blood flows that did not have enough time to clot completely before they made contact with the shroud.
So, Prixie asks, who also says Dapper Dinosaur is a linguist. He's also a cryptotheist and a crypto-atheist simultaneously at the same time. Is it human blood? That's a good question. So the testing that I've seen, there's a medical doctor whose name is escaping me. We mentioned him in our interview with Hugh Ferry. I can't remember off the top of my head what his name was, but he's like the blood guy for the Shroud of Turin. And his tests indicated, so it wasn't conclusive, but it was most likely some kind of primate blood. It could have possibly been other kinds of animals, but most likely primate blood. Now, primate doesn't mean humans. Humans aren't the only primates, but I'd happily concede if you're going to get blood from a primate in Europe, there's one primate who's pretty available, and that would be us, you know? But yeah, I'm totally fine with it being human blood. Like, that's not a problem. Human blood is easy to find. Dead bodies, also easy to find, particularly in the 14th century. So, you know. Yeah, exactly. Like Michael Apple says, thinking a bit on human blood sometime in the late 13th century wasn't hard to arrange. You know, like, yes, it's not hard to come by. I mean, aside from just like the mundane of like the artist himself or like getting a dead body from somebody or any other thing, they routinely did bloodletting at that time. Like, that was like a medical process they did. Like, seriously, none of this is a problem. Anyway.
Notice that Dr. Alan Adler says moisten blood clots, meaning that before the body of Jesus made contact with the linen, the wounds were moistened with something. And Dr. Baima Bologna, a professor of forensic medicine in Turin, found myrrh and aloes in the blood by antibody antigen testing. Well, that is most likely what these wounds were moistened with. And that's in agreement with the Gospel of John. And there came also Nicodemus, who first came to Jesus by night, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100-pound weight.
So, once again, they had, say it with me, folks, they had the Bible in the 14th century. This is a book they had access to. So, if your fact is from the Bible, then it's not remarkable that it's on the cloth because they had the Bible.
Well, to give them credit, it's not like somebody who would be attempting to make a forgery in the Middle Ages or medieval time period would look at the Bible and go, you know what? I better make sure I mix some myrrh and aloes in this blood that I'm putting in here. So that way, in another 1,000 years, people, when they study it, will find that seems ridiculous.
Which I think the cotton thing would fall under that. If there were actual cotton fibers that weren't visible but were indicative of a blended fabric, that's the kind of thing that a forger would do, because like nobody at his time is going to find out or care, but like we can now. Like totally, like that's totally fair. However, using the same kind of burial oils that are mentioned in the Bible and splashing some of that on your body or whatever,
like if you're trying to reduplicate it somehow, like we don't, and again, we don't know how it was made, so we can't say what the process was.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. We do not know how it's made. No idea. No opinion on how it was made. But the point is that it's not like these materials would be difficult to find or to use in whatever methodology.
Or like this was secret information they didn't have. So all of this stuff was prior knowledge that could have been used.
That'd be another good example. Suppose there was like a specific kind of oil or herb or something that isn't mentioned in the Bible, wasn't known, but what we know now with today's knowledge was prevalent only in the burial practices of northern Israel in the 1st century. Well, that might be some compelling evidence. We don't have that, but yeah.
Do we need to make the obvious connection?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
All of this proves and confirms that on the shroud there are effectively real and complete bloodstains conserved in their various components. Dr. Edward A. Brucker, the Chief Deputy Medical Examiner of Southern Arizona. He spent over 30 years of his life researching the shroud. The puncture wound on the right side, shows that the individual continued to bleed after death.
And they didn't have dead bodies or spears or anything in the 14th century.
And they didn't know any of that stuff from any narrative at all.
Nope. Absolutely. Impossible. Inconceivable.
Yeah.
One can readily see the separation of serous fluid from the
We already talked
cellular
about that.
component.
Skipping again.
Enshrouded a corpse, and of this there is absolutely no doubt. Dr. Leoncio Garza Valdez, a pediatric cardiologist
Where's all this
and a
new
professor
evidence?
of microbiology. This is his quote. After DNA tests, we can state that after our isolation of the human DNA from the shroud with the cloning of 3 gene segments, there is no doubt of the presence of human blood type AB from a male on the shroud.
So we've already talked about this. The testing they did here was inconclusive. It's indistinguishable from no result, but okay, regardless. Let's say it's true. Let's say that it's AB blood. Cool.
From a male.
From a male. What blood type was Jesus?
Wait. No, it's in Mark.
Yeah. Mark chapter 420. Yeah. This is like nobody knows. How would you know? We don't have Jesus, right? So like, okay, it's AB. That tells us nothing. Now, I guess it would say like, if we could say that it's AB blood on this thing and that other thing, right? Okay, I would concede that if the Sidarium and the Shroud had a rare blood type in common, that is something that is expected if they came from the same source. But it's not exactly a miracle if they didn't, right? So even if you grant it, it's still not that impressive. But we shouldn't grant it because I'm pretty sure it's wrong.
Yeah.
Prixie's a good point. They said we have the DNA. They just said it. We can Jurassic Park this. We can make this happen.
Somebody give me a chicken egg, a syringe, and a
Dude,
microwave.
You've seen all the stuff about the like meat, the meat grown in vats, right?
Yeah.
Like the ethical meat, right? Which they outlawed in Florida preemptively, I think.
We do true Eucharist.
Exactly. No more of this transubstantiation stuff, baby.
Going right to
We
the
can
source.
just straight up flesh. We can have Jesus steaks, bro. We can like
Now,
grill
wait.
up some Jesus.
If you think that is being mean, it's not, because Christian doctrine, some
Catholic
Christian
Christian
doctrine, not even just Catholic, but some
Yeah.
English and Anglican believe in transubstantiation, where the wafer or the bread or whatever you pray over literally becomes the body of Christ during the Eucharist. So we're not poking fun here. Well, we are poking
We
fun.
are poking fun.
But this is legit stuff. Okay. So you just, if you want to eat, if you want to be a cannibal, we can clone the meat. We can grow it in a lab.
I'll say though, if we had access to ethical human meat, I would totally try it. I'd absolutely try
I mean, ethical. Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
like if I could know for sure it was from clones and like it was all ethical, it was like voluntary or long dead or
yeah.
whatever in this case. Like, so can you imagine the market there'd be? Like you could have some like famous people give up their thing. Like you could have like Taylor Swift's like ribs or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There's a subreddit for it already, I'm sure.
Do not look for that subreddit. Do not do it.
Direct analysis with an optical microscope with phase contrast of the blood from the left wrist showed the material was organic, cellular, not crystalline, as are found in pigments and paints. Researchers took blood samples from the back of the head, from the soles of both feet, from the left wrist area, and also from the side wound that left a horizontal belt of blood across the backside. They didn't just take one drop of blood from the corner of the cloth, like they did in the carbon dating, but samples from 5 different places that we know of. This is how testing is supposed to be done.
Well, okay, it is fair that it would have been way better if the carbon dating had been done with samplings all across the thing. Totally, that would have been better. And that was the original plan. That plan was changed. I don't know that it's known for certain why it was changed, but it's pretty like it was done in concert with the representative from the
Right.
Vatican and like the British Museum guy. They're the ones who eventually decided on the procedure. And I think it's pretty obvious why, because it's destructive. And so they didn't want to cut a bunch of holes in it. They wanted to cut one hole in an area that they'd already cut some stuff away from. So, because it's a holy relic. And I mean, people like talk shit about the Catholic Church for not like letting people examine it. And I would love it if they would let people examine it for sure. But if you put yourself in their shoes, and if they honestly believe this is a holy relic from their savior, right? It's understandable why they'd be reluctant to light pieces of it on fire, you know?
Yeah. Or if they don't believe it, but they know their partitioners or practitioners believe it, then
Right. Then you could, I mean, I think you could make a utilitarian argument that if this engenders faith and that faith is true, even if the reason that it engenders it isn't true, is that bad?
Mm,
You could make an argument. So, all right,
you could also shoot a laser at this piece of cloth right now.
I really want that laser graphic. All right, we're like an hour and a half into this.
And we've skipped some stuff.
Yeah, and he's starting to repeat himself a little bit. I'm gonna give it like 5 more minutes. This might need to be a 2-parter. If you are interested in part 2 of this amazing video, the first half was incredible. I 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you want us to come back and do the other half later, then leave it in the comments. Let us know. But we'll see if he does anything cool here in the last couple minutes.
And they all contain the same AB blood. The blood samples from the back of the head also have wood splinters embedded in the blood from an oak tree and some leaf remnants.
And you can't find oak trees or leaves anywhere in Europe.
Anywhere ever. Nope.
Can't happen.
Oak was one of the most plentiful trees in Israel at that time.
There you go.
This
Oh my
means
God.
that the blood and the wood splinters arrived on the cloth at the same time.
That does not mean that at
The
all.
most
That doesn't mean that at all. Not the slightest.
That is not how that works. That logic is false.
There's oak splinters on the cloth. There's a lot of oak trees in Israel. Therefore
Therefore,
it's from
they came at
Israel.
the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. There's pine pollen on my deck right now. There's a lot of pine trees in Germany. Therefore, my deck is from Germany.
Yeah, but even that, like the fact that he's saying there's that, but he's taking it a step further and saying that the oak and leaves got onto the cloth at the exact same time as the cloth was resurrectified or whatever you want to call it. Like they could have been put on at any point.
Well, at any along with the blood, I think it's like suspended in the blood, but still at the same time.
Well, sure.
Free tinker, but also if they like cut a couple inches off to show it's real and they believe that it's real, wouldn't that engender way more faith? I think that's like a reasonable position to take, and I would love them to do that. And I know that the Shroud of Turin researchers also would love them to do that.
But what if you took the hell wager, which is the opposite of Pascal's wager, whereas if they turned out to be false, how many people would you lose from the faith?
Right. And so like if they're not sure, and the Vatican doesn't acknowledge it as an authentic art of
Correct.
I forget the term. There's a term that's like it's an object of reverence.
So it's venerated, but it's not.
Yeah, basically they say, "Hey, this is an important thing to worshipers, but we're not saying it's authentic." Is the position of the church. So I don't know. Yeah, it like Michael Apple says it's a risk for them to take, and why would they take it? Like, there's not really a compelling reason for them to do it, and I don't think it necessarily means like, oh, they make a ton of money. I don't think that it's not that Catholic Church is hurting for money.
$1 million.
$1 million. Have you seen the churches in Rome? I've seen the churches in Rome, and those things are ostentatious as hell, and also really cool. You should see them. But yeah, they don't need money. They got money.
A plausible explanation is that the remnants of wood were splinters that had pierced the skin of Jesus during the falls he suffered on his way to Golgotha.
And that is the hammer, so it's true.
He hit Jesus in the head with a hammer.
Type AB blood on the Shroud of Turin. Type AB blood on the Sudarium of Oviedo, the head cloth. And then there's a third, some heart tissue that appeared during a mass in the 7th century in Italy. It's called the Lanciano miracle. It's scientifically validated, scientifically documented. It's also type AB blood.
Okay.
This is the first I've heard about this one.
I've
so.
never heard of this one before. I don't know that we want to dive into heart
A
tissue.
brand new heart tissue
Hour
that
and a half in.
miraculously appeared and happened to be validated by science.
We'll leave that one for next time. Okay, this video is excellent. I'm glad you sent it to me. That this blew all my expectations out of the water. This was so much better than I thought it was going to be.
So, all right, you know how many Shroud videos you have to watch for YouTube to start recommending stuff like this to you?
We are so many levels deep in the Shroud at this point. It's not even funny.
The algorithm's like, oh, you like Shroud videos? Check this one out.
Don't worry, bro. I got you. Yeah, I got you. All right, folks. Thank you for coming and suffering / laughing with us. I had a good time. I thought this was a good video. This is a good pick. If you would like us to do that second one, like I said, leave a comment and let us know if there's people want to see it. We'll do more. Other than that, though, we do have some other stuff coming up. Shroud of Turin related. We have the fourth video in our carbon dating. Fourth, I think it's fourth video. It's going to be the radiation one. So we're going to talk Bob Rucker's thing. We're going to talk maybe the UV stuff. It's the next big video.
The Sudarium's probably going to make an appearance.
I think, yeah, we definitely need to. That'll be on the list. So that'll probably make it through there. Michael Apple, you says you totally buy a Shroud ShamWow. I looked it up, and you can find Shroud prints. But we could, if people really, really, really want us to. I'm pretty sure the pictures, at least some of them, are public domain, so we could get them printed on like shirts and like tablecloths. You could eat like wafers, Jesus wafers off of Jesus.
Can we have lasers shooting them?
Totally.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let us know if you're interested in any of that. Thanks for coming. But remember, until next time, you've always got reason to doubt.
Peace out.